Hello everyone. What follows is my conversation with the renowned YouTuber Jason Stephenson, to whose soothing, soporific voice and calming demeanor, by this point in time I think millions of you all across the globe have fallen asleep. To my gratitude for having been able to get in contact with Jason and host him on my humble little show, I simply can give no words. It was an extraordinary opportunity for me, and I can't but remark on the peculiar times in which we live when an indistinguished, small little content creator such as myself can reach out to someone who's had such success on this platform and reached so many millions of people, and talk with him for an hour or two about his life, his history, his philosophy, and the future projects to which he plans to devote his time. So, for so many things, I'm grateful, most of all to Jason, and to you, the viewer who is stopping by to experience a great conversation. And I hope that's precisely what we are able to provide. So without further ado, I give you my conversation with Jason Stephenson. Hello, everyone, and welcome to this episode of Finneran's Wake and Numa, the two channels of mine on which I'll post this talk. I'm so grateful that you've stopped by to listen, and I can assure you a great conversation awaits. I'm joined by the renowned Jason Stephenson, the creator of the extraordinarily popular YouTube channel Jason Stephenson Sleep Meditation Music, to which, no doubt, over the course of the past decade or so, many of you have fallen asleep, practiced yoga, driven your cars on your commutes in the morning, set the tone of your day, or perhaps even calibrated your entire life. 12 years ago, Jason began what must have been, at the time, a modest little YouTube channel, not unlike the one on which he's kindly agreed to appear, to which, at present, nearly 3 million people across the globe subscribe. Last I checked, his large and growing array of videos covering topics like mindfulness, meditation, affirmation, music, and sleep has accumulated over 700 million views, a number unsurpassed, so far as I can tell, by anyone producing content in this genre. Needless to say, the impact Jason has had on his audience is immeasurable. A brief glance at the comments with which his videos are littered attests to the fantastic work that he's doing and to the benefit that so many have derived from his efforts. Jason, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you very much, Daniel. It's an absolute pleasure to be here. And I must say, you just said, when you said 700 million views, I was like, oh my goodness, whoa.
And you have to update your personal website with that number. Last I checked, which was just a day or two ago, you still had it at about, 650 million. So I don't know when you last visited that site, but you've grown immensely. And that growth is something certainly about which I'd like to talk. It's a staggering number. And you probably can expect in the forthcoming months, perhaps a year, to reach that vaunted 1 billion view mark. So congratulations thus far on your success.
Yeah, thank you so much. Thank you. And it's not just my success too, it's now my team's success, and it's everyone's success.
Sure.
I'm very grateful for the position that I'm in.
Absolutely. And we're all grateful to you for you and your team having produced such valuable content. So
thank you.
We'll focus for a little while on the present success, but first, I want to talk a little bit about the channel's genesis. Take us back a few years, quite a few years. I want to know a little bit about the motivation behind this channel's creation. Now, I mentioned your personal website, and it mentions, with laudable candor, some of the difficulties with which you struggled as a young man, and I can imagine those difficulties maybe inspired you to pursue this sort of a project. So tell us, why did you create this channel, and why focus on sleep and wellness?
Okay, well, first of all, you mentioned the difficulties that I had experienced, and that was sort of had a career in music. I was doing singing and acting, and it kind of hit some rocky roads in my late 20s, and I went off the rails with that. My way of dealing with that was alcohol and drugs, just to wipe myself out as much as I could, because of the hurt and the anger I felt of not achieving what I wanted at that time. And it was more of what I wanted. I'll say that in terms of my ego self belief that I deserved everything, And anyway, so I went off track, and really it wasn't until it was 2005, and I was diagnosed with HIV due to my recklessness. And that was a pivotal moment in my life of, I could either go one way or the other. I could keep going the way I was going and be absolutely reckless and take other people down with me and keep going with the drugs and just obliterate myself, or I could completely change. Well, there was no real question for me. I did value life so much. I've always valued life, and I knew that things had to stop and I had to change, and I did. And I remember walking down the beach one day, and I started to listen to affirmations myself. In fact, it was the movie The Secret that began to, plant a few seeds inside of me. And I remember walking on the beach one day after about a year of the diagnosis, and went through, a lot of dark times during that time, and depression and anxiety, lots of anxiety. And I reached this point when I was down the beach, and I looked out and saw the ocean and the beautiful sunrise as it was happening with my dog. I was there, and this intense joy just washed over me for the first time in such a long time. And I realized that then and then I said to myself, my goodness, I'm living, the words come to me here in vitality. And here in vitality, ironically, stands for HIV. And I just said, there's no need to be afraid anymore. Look at this, look what's in front of me. I'm living here in vitality. I mean, it's amazing. It's beautiful. And that was a real transition for me, and a real, although I dabbled in meditation prior, something really changed, and I started to attend Buddhist monastic retreats. We've got, back in New South Wales, we had the largest Buddhist temple in the Southern Hemisphere, which was only a few kilometers from me. So I began to attend retreats, and the monastic retreat was what really, really awakened me, and I realized the power of mindfulness. So why I started the YouTube journey was because I really wanted children, first and foremost, to believe in themselves and to honor themselves and to love themselves no matter who they are. This was so important for me because I certainly didn't. And although I had my parents, the most beautiful people, there was just something inside me that couldn't accept who I was, and that I was a bit different. And I wanted children to know and to realize that no matter who they are, what they do, that they're beautiful. And so my first YouTube video was, and my first CD actually was based on affirmations for children in word and song. So I got to sing some affirmations to them, and there was a short guided meditation journey at the end of that. And that for me, I remember having that up on YouTube. I'm not even sure if it's there anymore. It was quite a long time back, and I remember someone saying to me, "They're wonderful, my children, they've got your CD, and do you do anything for adults?" And at that time I thought, oh my goodness, no, I don't do anything for adults. I don't know if I could. And I said, no, I haven't, but maybe I'll try. And that's how it all began. I started a guided meditation for adults. I just tried it. And it was after a few attempts, one of them took off. And that was the start of it. I think that was back in about 2000, and it all started about 2011, but really picked up in about 2013.
Yeah, and it's an incredible story. I suppose the barrier to entry is always a little bit smaller. The obstacle's less insuperable when you're dealing with children. Their judgment can be a little less daunting. You can usually gain their trust a little bit more easily with such things as this. They're more easily entertained. It's when you go to the adults that you face a more ominous picture, more daunting picture. So you certainly made the transition successfully. So there's one. Well, there are a few parts of your biographical sketch on which I'd like to expand. One is that feeling of intense joy that you experienced on the beach. In the best way that you can, tell us, to what do you attribute this revelatory, almost Damascene feeling? It reminds me of Paul on the road to Damascus being struck by some higher spirit and undergoing this profound transformation, this awakening, because obviously you were in a very dark place, a dark time of your life. So was it simply a connection with nature to which you'd never really tuned in, or do you attribute it to something perhaps more religious? Tell us.
Yeah, good question. And let me tell you that many years ago first, it's happened twice in my life. When I was a child of about 9 years of age, we went on a trip around Australia, blessed to go around Australia with my parents, and I was out in the country and I was on my own sitting by a gorge called Geeky Gorge in Western Australia. And I would often go off on my own. I loved my own company. I loved the connection of nature, and I've loved that for such a long time. And I was sitting out there beside this gorge, and I can remember as a child just sitting there and feeling like in that moment, those moments, that I had everything that I could ever want in my life. I didn't need at that point friends, family. I didn't need anyone or anything. Everything was there, rolled into one in the simple act of just being. And then I experienced that once again in my early 20s. And then there was a void from, not a void as such, but I never experienced that again until that time when I was walking on the beach again. And there's just this waves of peace and happiness. In some ways, it's some sort of an awakening to the beauty and to the love that we have within and without, that is already contained within us. But it's just taken this, going through maybe this dark time to realize then and to awaken to what is in front of me now.
Or to reawaken, in your case.
Reawake, sorry, absolutely. To reawaken, yeah, perfect.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah, and that idea of reawakening has some resonance, I think, in literature and in poetic literature especially. It's something about which William Wordsworth talks, of course, in a more religious way, but he talks about this being born is both the falling in a sleep and a reawakening to the world. And it sounds as though you very uniquely experienced that. Now, I want to ask you, do you, on the matter of its being unique, do you think that you are maybe specially predetermined or preconditioned to experience something like that? Because not many people, I think, can reflect upon a moment as profound and as transcendental as your experience. And they'll say, oh, well, Jason is just this sort of supernatural being who's able to more easily connect with nature and to find this transcendental bliss. That's not something that I could do. I'm working in the city. I have a 9-to-5 job. I'm working 40 hours a week, etc. So do you think that you are unique in your having this experience?
I have spoken to other people that have had similar experiences, so I know that it does happen. If we look at it, I'm not a strong believer in reincarnation, but if we can just take that as a possibility for now, just for now, and possibly maybe there are parts of me that are just are awake more so than what other people have. They might have other parts that are awake in themselves too that I'm not awake to. Maybe there's just certain parts, because even from a child, even from very, very young, when I was on my own, I always found this, I found a contentment and a love. But I'm reluctant to say it's unique to me, because I know that I have spoken to other people, and maybe it happens. Maybe it can also happen at times when when we're going through difficult times in life, and maybe when we need it, when we're just lost in the darkness, and that might trigger it. Because I will tell you, the time when I was in my 20s and it happened. Now, here's a little story, if I can just share this with you.
Please do.
I was on my way to Sydney, commuting from Wollongong to Sydney on a train. I was doing this for a few years, and I was starting to get restless. It's become this humdrum of life, and I just thought, my goodness, how much more am I going to do of this? And there was really something else I wanted to do, and it was acting and singing work and that sort of thing. But I got off at the train midway at this Royal National Park on the way to Sydney, and I had not planned this. In fact, when I grabbed my backpack, the train stopped, and my friend said, "What are you doing?" And I said, "I'm getting off here." And they said, "What are you getting off here for?" And I said, "I don't know. I'm getting off. See you later." And that's the time I clambered up this mountain and got on the edge of the Royal National Park and sat there overlooking a cliff, and then the ocean and the forest down below me. And that was yet another time when I experienced those waves of peace, and that containment of everything that I ever could want was there in that moment. And that was, in fact, that was probably the strongest moment I've ever had. That was in my early 20s. And in that instant, after that happened, I remember wanting to get home quick to tell my mum and dad what had happened. And I knew that the job was over. I was either going to work part-time or not at all, because I wanted to pursue my interests. And I went to the boss the next day and I said, I would like to work part-time. And he said, "Well, we can't have that, because everyone will want to work part-time." I said, "Well, I must leave. I have to follow my dreams." And so he wished me well, and that was the beginning of a new chapter. So it was just that another reawakening again at a time when I needed it most.
Yeah, these reawakenings with which your life thus far has been rife. It must be difficult for you in some ways to try to recapture these extraordinary feelings. These feelings of transcendence and of joy and of complete felicity, much less to instruct others on how also to experience them. Is there some disappointment or some letdown in your daily practice that you're not always able to achieve this status?
there's some great points there, Daniel, and you're probably the first person that's really touched on this. There are many times where I've wanted to reach those points again, consciously and intentionally, and I know that I got close to that through taking ayahuasca. I went on an ayahuasca journey, and that similar feeling come back again, which was absolutely mind-blowing. And just very recently, breath work, holotropic breathing, has done the same thing yet again. So I've discovered something that really intentionally sets about and gives me that. But what I've realized is that it's also silly to try and chase that reawakening, that feeling again. And it's up to me just to get on with doing the best I can, living life and giving the most that I can while I'm here.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
It's important for me.
Yeah, almost paradoxically, to borrow one of the tenets of Buddhism, one is supposed to let go of thirst, of desire, right? Of seeking these things, for whose seeking there is no end, or to whose seeking there is no end. In a strange way, seeking this intense bliss and this intense and perfect joy is sort of a desire. Like, it's the ultimate stage toward which you're aspiring, but to want it too strenuously, or to go after it too avariciously, kind of brings you back down. It's like chutes and ladders. It brings you back down the chute to the very beginning.
Exactly right. When we're too much focused on that outcome, then we're not here, right? We're not right in the present moment, and it's even almost it's kind of ego based. There's a part of us wanting to feel that intense experience, and I think that's kind of a bit of the ego there. The bodily desires, if you like, because the real work, right, lies in the giving, and the work that oftentimes we don't like, that we're not getting those joyous feelings, but it's work all the same, and it's important work. Yeah,
and I think to some extent I empathize with you and with those experiences. I too find, at least through my life, I have found instances of that extreme connection with nature, and perhaps transcendence as well. And it's always when I'm in these states of solitude, in nature, immersed in nature. I mean, truly immersed in nature, be it on the beach or deep in the woods. I always think of Henry David Thoreau when this happens, the great transcendental writer who lived in the early 19th century in America, with whom you may or may not be familiar, but yes. I sort of think that there is I think there's a minority of people existing on Earth and throughout history who have sort of who have been more predisposed to these feelings of connection, and it's something that more easily comes to them or comes through them. I don't know how you would describe it. Maybe it acts through them more than it does so through others. But I also don't think that it's impossible for others to experience this as well. Like you said, you've met a few people in your life, and I'm sure having 3 million subscribers on your YouTube channel, you've probably interacted with quite a large number of them. Mm-hmm. And maybe you've only encountered people who have had these experiences on few occasions, as is sort of the case with me. So I think it takes sort of a deeply introspective individual, and a very thoughtful person, and one who's inclined to love nature, to bring all these factors together and to have these types of experiences. Now, I think it's fascinating that you've in some ways replicated or recreated in certain ways. These feelings were perhaps shadows of these feelings with your use of ayahuasca and of your breath work. Now, let me just ask, do you have any videos currently demonstrating this breath work, this holotropic breath work of which you made mention?
No, I'm currently actually doing some breathwork teacher training right at this very moment. I'm halfway through the course, and we're just producing a new course actually that's being launched on the 1st of March, which has touches of this new breathwork activation meditation. So it's just touches of it. But I do plan to bring this out more and more because, you see, when I've been doing meditation, I've just been focusing on the parasympathetic nervous system, the relaxation response, and even singing and acting. We're taught diaphragmatical breathing, but I never knew this other side of breath work. I'd heard about it so often, but had never tried it.
For those of us unacquainted with it, can you briefly describe it for us?
Well, I know that breathwork's been around for centuries. Some yoga practices. Now this name, it's going to escape me. It has escaped me. What is it? The nostril breathing.
Yes, I don't know its proper yogic term, but alternate nostril breathing.
Thank you. And so I dabbled in that, but I think back in the 60s there was a psychotherapist, Stanislav Graf, I think his name is, and he discovered this holotropic breath work, which was what he found is that when people breathed deep and the circular breathing, and it was faster than normal, mostly faster than normal and deeper than normal, after 2 to 3 hours, they enter into this almost like a trance state, a theta state of mind, where it unlocks the subconscious mind. And the breathwork teacher that I'm working with at the moment, what he does is he takes you on these journeys, but when you've reached that level of complete bliss and almost trance-like state, he then puts in these powerful affirmations into your mind. So it's really just seeping into your subconscious directly. And so I've discovered this and just recently, and I'm absolutely in awe of it. And I'm so excited to begin to share this as a part of my journey and to help others.
Oh, and we're all very eager to embrace it and to watch what you have to offer. I know only a little bit about it. Now, I dabble in a few different types of breath work, but not in a formal way. I have never been under the supervision of a proper instructor the way you have been. But I think we fail to realize just how remarkably powerful our bodies are. You just by breathing or changing the pace or the depth or the frequency at which you're breathing changes the blood chemistry. Now, you probably don't think of these things biochemically or materialistically the way some people do and some people measure it. I think the spiritual component is what is most fascinating about these types of breathing. But so much of your physiology and your chemistry is changing when you're doing these things. And really, what are you doing? Well, you're sitting there, right, with your eyes closed, and you're simply opening and closing 2 orifices of your body, your nose, which are connected, nose in your mouth. So it's something that anyone, really, most anyone can do and experience these profound alterations in, like you said, consciousness, their level of sensitivity with what's happening around them, and of course, blood chemistry as well.
Absolutely,
yeah.
And dealing with trauma. That's what they found, that it's a good, very, very good way to tap deeply and quickly into healing past trauma.
Yeah, and I'm very eager, like I said, to see some of your videos. Now, do you have to be a certified breath specialist in this category to be able to then, produce content related to it or to instruct others on it?
I think it's very wise. I don't think you have to be like, there's no, rules, but obviously you've got to take this seriously, very seriously, in fact, because there are some contraindications within this work. So you really have to know what you're doing, because when you're tapping into people's past trauma, then it's really important for them to recognize before they even begin the potentiality of what could happen in this journey, and to remind them that they're in control of the journey. They're always in control. If it's too much for them, they can bring it back. Just bring the breathing back. Breathing in and out through the nose brings it back to the the parasympathetic, the relax and digest area. But yeah, I really want to learn as much as I possibly can before. You probably won't see, I don't know if you'll see anything on YouTube. I'll certainly be doing it in courses and that sort of thing. But yeah, I need to learn a lot more before I continue this.
Sure, as do I, and all of us. And to me, it's extraordinary, because what could be more simplistic than breathing?
That's right.
As the normal person. But of course, it is such an intricate process. And you talk about a reawakening or a remembering. So many of us immediately forget how to breathe properly. And it's such a fundamental neglect of ours, of which we're all guilty, unless
Sure.
you're really a constant practitioner of breathing and a devout student of this. What is an exercise? You say breathing exercise. Well, if we weren't breathing, we wouldn't be living. But no, there are proper ways to breathe, just as there are proper ways to live, I suppose. And to me, it's also endlessly interesting to think that you can almost inadvertently slip into these, as you put it, frightful psychological states just by breathing. I was introduced a few years ago to the work of Wim Hof.
Oh yes,
with whom you're probably familiar.
Yes.
Now, he acquired quite a large and enthusiastic audience, but probably owing to his extreme exploits, trekking through the wintry mountains of the Himalayas, and being featured on Joe Rogan's podcast, and sort of becoming this eccentric celebrity in his own right, this eccentric Nordic celebrity. And I think a lot of people were turned on to his teachings, to his sort of philosophy, to his strangeness, someone to whom they've never been exposed. And I think he practices that type of breathing. I could be wrong, but it's something similar. But I don't think he then goes into the more meditative process where you're reaching back for distant traumas and maybe addressing them in this heightened state of inspiration. I mean, inspiration in the Latin way, inspired by air. So I think those of us who have some exposure to Wim Hof, for instance, might be the perfect candidates to then try what you're explaining. So I think you have a ripe audience to attempt this, if they're willing.
For sure. I must admit, I haven't. Ironically, I have Wim Hof's book on my dining table that I haven't even opened yet. So I'm yet to read about his story. So I haven't even completed one of his journeys. But I will tell you something. The journey that I have completed, it's only been like about a 1.5 hour journey. But at the end of it, we go into a meditation, and it is the deepest form of meditation I have ever been in, without trying at all. So with meditation, normal meditation, we sit there and our job is to be and just accept. But after this breathing work, it's like you naturally just fall, you're already there in that state. You've reached the deepest state instantly. And that's the beauty of it. Words just cannot describe the feeling, the ecstaticness, the joy. the completeness that I've experienced just in, a couple of times of doing these longer journeys. It's just been beyond words, words.
Owing to the intensity of the experiences of this breathing meditation followed by these proper meditations or more traditional meditations, do you think that you'll disregard what you were doing previously and really just devote yourself to this, or is it perhaps too time consuming to do this on a daily basis?
Well, I can tell you now that my morning routine consists of 15 minutes of breath work, and even that 15 minutes of breath work gives me a couple of minutes of stillness at the end of that, maybe say 5 minutes of stillness. And so in some instances, it's kind of replaced my official meditation experience, if you like. I start with the breath work and then move into that meditation experience. So it's kind of combined into one now.
And you brought up the topic on which I wanted to focus for just a little while, and that's your daily regimen, the ways in which you begin and conclude your days. Again, the average person will look at you as this sort of meditative guru, this philosophic sage, this very accomplished practitioner of these meditative techniques. So let us peek through the curtains, or join you on the beach in the morning, or by the lake, or wherever it is you set up and begin your day. How do you do so? Do you go through a certain breathing technique? You answered in the affirmative. You do. Do you stretch in a certain way? Do you go do a certain exercise routine? Do you eat a certain way? Do you fast? Tell us a little bit about your day, specifically how it begins and maybe how it ends, being the sleep master. How do you yourself begin to prepare for a full night's rest?
Mm-hmm. Well, Daniel, it's probably going to disappoint you and maybe a lot of other people. I've gone through stages of having strict routines, everything from meditation to, waking up at 5 a.m. to journaling to this, to that. And then oftentimes when I wouldn't stick to that, I'd start to get angry at myself and just say, why do you, I would beat myself up over it. I've really reached this point now that I have a loose routine, if you like. It's very loose, but it does consist of a few things. I'm responsible now for a dog and for a couple of birds, and I let them out in the morning. That's really important for me, to tend to the animals first. That's what I do, because I know the birds want to go outside. That's the best part of the day in the morning. I get them out, I feed them, I cut up fruit for them and all that sort of thing, and then take my dog for a walk. And that's when I say take my dog for a walk, that's me as well, because I'm currently actually at the moment I'm training to go on a Simpson Desert trek with my mum, who's 78, and we're doing that at the beginning of May. So
best of luck to both of you.
Yeah, thank you so much. I get a bit nervous about it, but anyway, we'll see how we go.
She's probably saying the same thing about you.
Yeah. Yes, exactly. She probably is.
No, I imagine you're both in very, very good shape, very fit, and I'm sure you'll have no difficulty.
Well, it's not so much. I've got a lot of work to do, and so I'm really getting into that now. Fitness probably has been my downfall, but I've got no excuse now. I need to train, because otherwise I'm not going to make it. And I will add that when we're out in the middle of the Simpson Desert, there's no cars, no nothing, no Wi-Fi, no shops, phones, nothing except camels that are carrying our stuff. So I have to be in good condition.
And how many miles does this?
It's not much. We're only looking at about 12 kilometers a day.
I'm sorry, kilometers.
Yeah, but this is, the interesting part is it's over a lot of sand dunes and stuff, and it's long enough for me, put it that way, and long enough for my mum too. My mum's actually walked the desert about 3 times before, the entire length of the desert. She's gone on 6-week treks. And she actually said to me, she said, this is her last trek. And she said, she invited me. And she said, would you like to come? And I said, I didn't have to think about it. I just said, absolutely. I'm coming.
As long as you don't slow her down.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
She's experienced.
Exactly, Daniel. Exactly. But yeah, getting back to the routine. So once I come back from a walk, that's when I'm doing my breath work on the yoga mat. And my dog actually has learnt now to not lick me and carry on. And so he actually now sits down until I do my work. And then then I call him up. And so that's kind of my morning routine. There's in regards, and I will say, I actually love getting a coffee in the morning from the local store down the road. And it's not so much the addiction of coffee, it's more the community spirit of just going down there and saying hi to all the people. I love that. I love that part. So I love my morning cappuccino.
So let me just interrupt very, very briefly. So you have no qualms about caffeine. I can picture some purists, some meditative purists thinking that, the breath work is enough of a stimulative effect to not necessitate any sort of adventitious substance such as caffeine. So you're sort of not on that side of the conversation.
I have heard it before. I've had people tear me down for, if I'm drinking a cup of tea while I'm doing the YouTube thing. Well, what are you doing that for? Do you know that's got caffeine in it? And, I love all these different teas. And, that none of that bothers me. It's just something I do, and I'm not afraid to admit that, or I'm not concerned about it. I do agree, though, that we certainly don't need it, and I don't have it all the time. But it's just that little ritual of getting down that store and talking to the people, and So I'm not a vegetarian either, and that's something I question that even myself.
You're about to be excommunicated from this entire community. Caffeine, that's venial sin, but to consume animal protein is unforgivable. You better find a new channel to start. What other interests do you have?
Let me tell you, I know that I've copped it all, and I'm okay with that. And
I have. The focus is not on me; it's on you. But I'll just add, I have spent, or I did spend about 4 years as a vegetarian, and now I am in a more disproportionately animal protein heavy way of living. And it's an interesting and always hotly contested conversation, and the science is always pliable. You can always bend nutritional science to your side or to the other side, but ultimately it has to be congenial to your peculiar being, to your constitution, how you're built, and also to your flourishing. So that's sort of the very simplistic way I look at it. Now, of course, there will be ethical and philosophical debates, I'm sure, in the comment section of some of your videos, if ever this would leak out. But I hope that we can all get past that, at least for now. So you don't eat a strictly vegetarian. I'm sorry, like a strict diet in any way. I presume, based on sort of your looseness in other category and other things. Do you do any fasting? Do you do that as a way to heighten or augment the meditative experience or the mindful adventures on which you're going every day?
I've got to admit, I've gone through stages, and I've still got my juicer, because I've gone through really massive stages of juicing and organic vegetables and greens, and currently I'm not doing that at the moment, but I have no doubt that will be coming out again, because when I was going through that, I can remember very, very well the energy pumping through my body. So, maybe that's something I can, just upon reflection, me talking about this to you now, that's something that I can take up. Again, because I in fact, I started a YouTube channel on this, on myself juicing. That was before the meditation channel, ironically enough.
That's right. Are those videos still extant? Can we still access them?
I think I took them all down. The old channel's still there, and there's still a few of me, I think, singing and stuff. But I think I took them all down. All of the juicing ones, I couldn't. I've got to admit, I couldn't stand them. To be honest,
just for a little digression. Tell us, as someone who has, ascended up the YouTube scales to YouTube, almost to YouTube, to the pantheon of YouTube. Let's say you're among the gods there, the deities. When you look back at some of your earlier attempts at videos, let's say, how do you feel? Are you forgiving of yourself and of those sort of incipient attempts, or do you cringe at the videos, remnants of your earlier endeavors? How do you feel about them?
I can laugh about them. I laugh about them. I mean, I might cringe as well, but it's okay. I can remember sometimes where I started this part of this channel too, where I was like some sort of a spiritual teacher at the time, and it was almost like a put on, and I was trying to be someone I wasn't. And I remember showing it to one of my life coaches at the time, and she said, Jason, she said, just be you. I was trying to be something else that I wasn't. And
you are not alone in having conducted, in having comported yourself in that way. I've only been on YouTube, and with a very, very small, marginal, almost unnoticeable presence for a brief while. But my earliest videos were conducted in precisely that way. It was this really forced, unnatural affectation, this presentation. And maybe it's because you have a history as a performer, as an actor, and a singer. You felt as though once the camera turned on, and whether it be on your computer or your little handheld cell phone or a little video camera, you felt as though you needed to exude a certain personality that didn't really align with your own. And certainly I experienced that. And I have no history in the theater. I just, you sometimes it's like a strange, unconsidered like reflex. The camera turns on you and you feel like you need to present someone who you aren't.
Yeah.
But I think what touches people so powerfully with you and your presentation is the authenticity. And I'm sure you're told that time and again. Prior to this interview, I went back and I watched some of your earlier videos, and that's all it is. I see a purity of spirit, a levity of soul, and just a real kind-heartedness that has no shade of malice or ulterior motive or like condescension. It seems very authentic. I should say though that your life coach was probably gave you excellent words of advice, and it must have been difficult at the beginning to try to present yourself as a life, well, in your own ways, as a life coach, because you're trying to lead people on these spiritual journeys, hopefully with the goal of their enlightenment or their betterment. But then, you know how the internet is. People will look at you and say, "Well, who are you? Just some, happy-go-lucky Australian man telling me, how I can get through my problems." We'll get to your nighttime routine, but maybe could you comment on that just briefly? This idea of being perhaps unsuited to tell people how they can better their lives.
I think with every single video I do now and every interview I do or whatever it may be, I even say a little prayer beforehand to God and just said, just allow me to be me and help me to be, just please help me and guide me to be me and for me to say what I need, what needs to be said. It's really important for me now to be as authentic as I possibly can and transparent as I possibly can, day after day after day, because I after all, and I just, if I'm not, then what's the point of it all? I'm lost as to what the point of it is. And I feel that in me being as honest and transparent as I possibly can and authentic as I possibly can, then I am giving people the permission to do exactly that, to be themselves as 100% truthful as they can be. And that's the greatest gift that we can, I think that's the greatest gift we can give God. That's how we were created, was to be ourselves, our unique selves. So I'm working on that. I'm every day I'll just do my best to be more and more clear and authentic as I possibly can.
Yeah, and I think that definitely shines through with all of your videos and all of your content. So there were a few references to God in that last passage. Now, tell me, in what sort of a religious creed were you raised, or if you don't mind sharing that with us, and maybe what are your thoughts of the divine now? Again, we're digressing a little bit. I still want to hear about your night.
Okay.
But I think this is too important a subject to bypass, and I know it's a sensitive one, and one over which everyone has, about which everyone has his or her opinion. But I'm especially interested when I meet people who have this level of transcendence and are interested in these experiences and can experiment with things like ayahuasca and these breathing techniques. I'm always interested to know sort of what their relationship is with the divine, whether it be a pantheistic approach or a theistic one, or a more traditionally Christian or Judaic or Muslim approach. So if you don't mind sharing, please tell us.
Sure. I was brought up most likely as an atheist. I know my father is, and my mother's mother my nan went to church, but my mum and dad certainly didn't encourage it. But I always had something that I needed to. In fact, I'm the one that took myself to Sunday school, and my brothers didn't. I wanted to go. And they just said, oh, well, if you want to go, go, And so I would often go to Sunday school, Christian Sunday school. So, and then fast forward 20, 30 years, I started to get into Buddhism. And at that time, I was also attending a Christian church, which I was really enjoying because I was also loving the singing aspect of the church. But I was going to the Buddhist temple as well and starting to deep dive into that. And then I reached a point of confusion, and I just thought, oh my goodness, like it wasn't sort of a Christian thing really to go to the Buddhist temple. And so I remember just discussing this with one of the reverends at the temple, and I said, I'm really confused. I don't know what I should be doing. I'm going to the church and I'm attending here. And I remember what she said to me. It was such a beautiful thing. She said, Jason, she said, you go away and you take with you what you learn from here and you share that with others. And when you go to the Christian church, she said, you learn what you can there and then you share that with others here. You always just get what you can and take it out to the world. And it's almost like she gave me this permission it was so liberating for me, because I started to get really concerned. I was getting concerned, a bit confused. And so she just gave me this total permission just to experience and to be and to do what I wanted to do on that platform. I think an awakening for me was reading the books by Neil Donald Walsh, The Conversations with God. I loved those books. They were awakening for me. And I don't say I'm a Christian. I don't even say I'm a Buddhist. I would say I'm a spiritualist in some aspect. I know that I sense that we all have, we're all co-creators with a God or with something greater than ourselves. There's something greater than ourselves, even if we don't use the word God. It's the acknowledgement of that. It's the acknowledgement that there's something much more powerful than us, and that helps to guide us when we listen, when we tune in more. We can be so much more guided.
It truly is unfortunate that on your long trek across the desert, you will be unable to bring along a recording device of some sort to transmit to the rest of the world, because I think a conversation between you and your mother on this topic would be very interesting. You know, you're so unusual in the best way, in that you were raised in a atheistic, seemingly kind of staunchly atheistic household, out of which you emerged uniquely spiritual and deeply spiritual. Now, I don't know how your brothers are inclined, whether they be inclined toward religion or away from it. It seems as though they're not quite as spiritual as you are, but I'm absolutely fascinated by that approach, that sort of syncretism between Buddhism, Christianity, and this sort of third thing that you've found, and this ability to combine them all into your own unique worldview, I think is another testament to this uniqueness that is you, and this, again, this wisdom that you're able to impart to other people. I think in some ways that's what you've done. You've absorbed a lot of what can be taught by these wisdom traditions, sort of amalgamated them in your own soul, and now you are distributing them in a very different way. So very interestingly, you're serving this higher purpose, and that's really something worth considering for a while.
But thank you.
Yeah, fascinating. I mean, everything about your story so far has been absolutely fascinating. It's an extraordinary history that you've told. So let's go transition back from the abstractions and the philosophies for a moment, back to your nightly routine. I know I've reiterated this a few times, but I feel like this is what we're all dying to know, because you are, again, the voice to whom 700 million people have at one time listened in their collective attempt to find more restful nights and more peaceful sleeps. So tell us a little bit about how you prepare and go to sleep. What do you do?
It's pretty simple, really. For the most part, prior to discovering breath work, I would always go to sleep with a meditation. Prior to that, I would sometimes listen to audiobooks. I love all the spiritual self-help audiobooks, and I would often find that if I just let them play until I fell asleep, possibly I was taking in some of that information. So that is something I still do to this day. So I listen to these audiobooks on, whether it be on breath work, meditation, personal development. Listen to a lot of Wayne Dyer, Jack Canfield, John Kabat-Zinn, all these teachers.
I want you to be honest for a moment. Do you listen to your own recordings of yourself to put yourself to sleep?
I have tried that. I've tried it once or twice. When I remember couldn't sleep, and I got really desperate, and I thought, look, I'll just give this a go. I'll give it a go. I think one time it worked, and I was really excited about it. And at the time, I told my staff, and I said, I went to sleep. I said, it works. And I was just, but for the most part, no.
Yeah, that would be a little self-indulgent. At that point, you may as well hang a portrait of yourself behind your head.
Yeah, and I get super critical anyway. All I'm listening for is, I just say, oh my goodness, oh, that was how I said that word, and why did I do that? So yeah, that's not for sleep. What I like to do is, I love going to bed early and just switching off the lights and being in blackness, and that is when I lie down and just be at peace there. And whether that be previously a lot, it was more just pure meditation. Just being there.
Do you make a habit of going out to the beach or whatever? I don't know if you're living on the beach or near the beach, but going out and watching the sunset, do you intentionally do that as a way to sort of set the circadian rhythm, the clock, and prepare yourself for bed? Or is that not really a part of your day?
Yeah. Well, now I live right out in the country, so I'm away from the ocean. However, I am in this beautiful spot. In fact, as I speak to you right now, I'm looking over the hills, and I often take my dog out again for a walk, and we walk down this dirt road with hills. And I find that when I get out there, it's always like going home. It's always like being home when I'm in those spaces. So do I do that every day, that exact location? No, I don't. I sometimes just take him for a walk down the main road. But a lot of times I love to go over the hill with this, and there I see the sunset. I see the orange skies. And even out the front of my house, I can often just sit out there, and the sunsets here, it's not over the ocean or anything, but they are so beautiful, and the sky is so orange and red, blood red. It's truly beautiful.
Oh, it sounds absolutely idyllic. Now, when you are there and immersed in these picturesque settings, do you bring with you a journal? You said earlier that you don't journal in the morning, but do you bring with you a journal at this time of the day, or maybe you jot some notes on your cell phone? Do you capture some of these feelings that are brimming inside you and make of them content or meditations or anything like that?
I really wish I could tell you that I do, but I don't. And for me, it's more the morning times where I write, and that's spasmodically as well. And I certainly write with pen and paper. I cannot write on the computer. Anything that's creative, to me, it has this disconnect. Once I have the pen and paper and I go out my yard and begin to write, it's free flow.
Tell me a little bit more about that process, your writing process. That's something in which I'm very, very interested. So you write strictly with pen and paper, and it sounds to be that you do so outside. Now, is there a specific type of pen, a specific type of paper? As a writer, I'm sure these are things on which you're very insistent and very specific.
Well, there's no particular pen and paper as such. But it's just the binding pads that I have. I've got journals stacked seriously since when did I first start? I think I started in 1990.
At the age of
1989 I started.
Yeah.
And but then it dropped off, and then it's come back, but needless to say, it's huge, and I'm still yet to go through. I want to go through some and revisit some of that. But what I find is with this, and I love, whether it be the coffee or a cup of tea, that is a part of the ritual for me of just sitting there. It's almost like that tea becomes a part of the whole meditation process, the whole writing process. It's this, once I have the tea there, I have the notepad here, and I'm set. In particular, in the winter, that's when it really, when I really love it, because it's just
so
the
you feel as though your creativity hits a new level in the winter time as opposed to
yeah. When I've got that cup of tea and I'm holding it there, trying to get my hands warm, it becomes just a whole part of the process.
It sounds as though your success is more attributable to the tea than it is to your own native talent.
Daniel,
I'm thinking of product ideas for you. I've thought of a few. I think this is certainly one. Some sort of a sleepy time herbal tea.
Yes.
Right. Maybe we should talk about this after the conversation. But I'm thinking of marketing a tea sort of with your brand, and also maybe a like a melatonin type sleep aid. But I think the tea is the direction in which we should go, because this seems to be the elixir on which all of the creativity depends.
Let me tell you, if you probably go through some of my live chats on some of my previous channels, and you'll see that I always had the cup of tea, and people had even asked me in the chat, what tea are you drinking today? I tell you, if I had my own tea, then I probably would have made $1 million.
Should I feel a little bit slighted that you're not imbibing a little tea right now? Did you not need the support of the magic elixir to converse with me today?
Well, I'm going to tell you truthfully, just when I just finished lunch and I didn't get a cup of tea. And as I sat down, and I'm so used to it possibly being here, I actually noticed this, and I thought, oops, there's nothing here. So that's okay. We'll do it.
I think you've been just as sharp as ever, even without the tea. So perhaps you're not as dependent as you once thought. So that's interesting. I mean, I love to learn about different writers and their processes. Like, how is it that you develop these ideas? Are you recording them into my phone, which is sometimes what I do if I'm on the road or if I'm out. I'll actually. That's one of the ingenious features of these iPhones that we all have or the smartphones.
Yeah.
To be able to pull that out and record and then write it down later. I think it's great. But also returning to pen and paper, I think that's invaluable and too often neglected. You see everybody typing in, and there is something, I suppose, natural with the extension of the fingers through the keyboard and to have that tactile feedback. But I think the pad and the pen are just irreplaceable, simply irreplaceable. So, do you write for many hours in one stretch? Do you devote a certain block to writing in the morning hours, or is it, again, like most other things, a little bit sporadic and unplanned and unpremeditated?
A little bit sporadic and unplanned, but I do my best to do, say, 15 to 20 minutes. That's my piece in the mornings, is 15 to 20 minutes, and I feel that that's usually enough. If I want to go over, of course, I can go over, but usually when I'm blocking out my morning, that's sort of the part that I give myself as the 15 to 20 minutes of free writing.
Yeah. And then your recording process, do you go to a studio, like a professional studio which you record, or are you sort of like me doing things in your closet?
Yeah, exactly. It's all done in this room, actually. And I'm blessed to have now I have a team of people that work for me that do, they quieten my voice, and they do beautiful things to my voice and to the videos, and they bring out the best. So yeah, I'm very grateful for that.
Well, I can say I don't think your voice naturally needs much amendment nor adornment. It's a beautiful and soothing voice, I think, as it is. So, and at what sort of frequency do you try to produce these videos or recordings? How often? How many a week do you perform?
Well, it used to be that I was doing them on the fly, and I would literally do 1 or 2 every week. But now we do our best to get ahead of time now, and so sometimes I can do, I might record 3 or 4 on one day, and get into that beautiful meditation space. Also, I get rid of my dog for that day, so my dog's not. In fact, my dog's here today, and I'm quite surprised you haven't heard him. He hasn't barked yet, so I'm touch wood. He's very quiet. But so we're doing block recordings now. I think we only release one meditation a week on YouTube. There's a couple of music tracks a week on the other channel, but it gives me time too then to focus on producing other content, which we're just beginning to move into, doing online courses and mini courses and things like this.
So is the life of a content creator, of a YouTuber, if that's a name by which you go, is that life more laborious, more grueling than you expected? Is it more time consuming than just simply speaking into a microphone and hitting publish?
Yeah, when I first started, I felt I have a team of people now, and they all do bits and pieces, and because when I first started, there was nothing that was routine. Like there was nothing. I just went off. I was flying on the seat of my pants, do things when I wanted. If I wanted 3 weeks off, I took 3 weeks off. If I wanted to do 2 videos, I would do 2 or 3 videos. But now we've reached this point where it's building upon a team, and there's much more structure to it. So now, things need to be done each week, whether that's some writing that needs to happen, or some creation content ideas, or the voice recordings themselves. It has to be done because there's people in jobs now that they rely on me doing my bit so they can get on with doing their bit. Upon saying that now, I work 3 days a week with the company, with Relax Me Online Australia. And so it's given me a lot of freedom to do other things in my time on Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. So I'm, my mind's always ticking as to different ideas to work on. It's always going.
Oh, I can tell. There's no shortage of activity up there. So you mentioned the sort of the transition between the early age when this channel was in its infancy and you were flying by the seat of your pants and putting out great material, and the stage at which you find yourself currently in a more sort of refined and scheduled and regularized place. I'd like to focus in on that transitional point. When did you realize that this channel, this business was viable as such?
That was about 5 or probably 2017, 2016, when I had to take on my first person to help me, because what was happening was there was more and more coming in with the inbox and messages that I just thought, oh my goodness, it's fine to answer them at the start. And I was answering literally every one of them for a few years, but then it gets a point where you're just there for a long time answering and responding to all comments. I thought, I can't keep doing this. So that's when I reached the point of, and the money the money was just rising incrementally, it was just going up and up. And I thought, I can take on someone now to help. And so I took on a guy that did, a lot of artwork and video editing. So he was Clark, his name was. He was my first one. He's still with me to this day.
Oh, that's wonderful to have retained so long.
Yeah.
It probably contributed to your growth and to your popularity to have been able to reply to these people personally. Like you said, though, it reaches a certain threshold beyond which you cannot conceivably respond to everybody and all their remarks. That said, I think early on, it was probably a great contributing factor to your growth, and people acknowledged in you someone who actually cared enough to respond to their comments. And
100%,
my numbers are infinitesimal compared with yours, but anytime a comment is left or an email is sent, it's easy for me because it might be one a week or if I'm that lucky. but it shows a real concern with your audience, and by a concern I mean a caring, a sympathy with those who are, and a gratitude to those who are watching and kind of spending their time with you. Maybe on that note, could you give us a little bit of advice for those of us like myself, sort of new to this platform and just trying either to grow an audience or just articulate thoughts and get them out there? What would you recommend someone do in these earliest stages of content creation?
Well, first of all, I must say, my friend Daniel, you reaching out to me, and you reached out with so much authenticity and gratitude and appreciation that I just had to respond to you. So, that goes without saying. You're doing the right thing right now.
Well, thank you so very much.
Yeah, you're most welcome. There's a few things I would suggest for people that are really starting out, beginning right from the very beginning of a YouTube channel or whatever social media platform it is, and that is to do it without expectations of making money. Because at the very beginning, I actually didn't even know I could make money. To be honest, I didn't know that. It wasn't until someone said, we can offer you so much money because you're getting so many views. And I'm like, what are they talking about? Money for getting views? How can that work? So I didn't even understand it. I think that I can honestly say this because I've started another little channel outside of the company on focus music, which I set the wrong intention. I set the intention that I'm going to start again to make money. It was to give another person a job, but it was still to make money. And thus far, it hasn't worked. And so it's been a beautiful learning curve for me again, that to get your intention straight about what is it you want to do? How do you want to be of service? How can you give? Then when we find that place, I truly know in my heart, when we're in that place of service, the money will follow. And so when you start the little YouTube channel, no one's going to see it in the initial stages, and that's great because that's your playtime. That's your free time to discover what it is you really want to do. And the channel that I'm talking about, that I go back to, that's still going, I might add. I've gone through 3 different things of what I wanted that channel to be, and I'm still not sure I'm at where I want it to be. I've gone through talking about crystals and gemstones, to focus music, for concentration, to spiritual topics. Just
don't move into streaming video games. There are too many channels like that. That's saturated. No, I kid. But I experienced this precisely the same thing, and because this channel, my channel, is in its infancy, in its early infancy, I can have an episode where I have a deep, meaningful, delightful conversation with you, and then last evening, I had a conversation with my father about American politics, and then a few days hence, I'm going to have a conversation with a Civil War historian who lives in South Carolina. And I think you're absolutely right. And it's difficult because, you want a certain viewership or some notice in the public sphere. You want to be part of the conversation. I don't necessarily expect to make any large sum of money, but it's this ability to interact and converse with extraordinary people. And never in the course of human history has this opportunity been available to so many people. And I am, again, endlessly grateful to you and to all my past guests, of whom there have been maybe half dozen, for agreeing to talk with me for a little while, because that's basically what I've done, is just send messages to who I think are really deep thinkers and hope that I get a response. More often than not, I get a response. Usually it's a negative in that they decline, but that's totally understandable. But that makes it all the more meaningful to hear back from someone like you, and then to be able to talk with someone like you is just, it's so powerful. And I think you appreciate that, having touched and benefited so many people. But I can't emphasize that enough. So aside from the fact of not expecting an income on which to live, I think that advice you give is great. And I think your personal example is especially important. And that is, after having amounted a huge audience and accrued millions, hundreds of millions of views, you tried to create something altogether new, but perhaps not with the right intentions. And even someone like you, who seems always to have the best intentions, and I'm sure by and large you did. But what a lesson to have learned, to have gone and tried that, and not quite succeeded immediately. Based on the idea, I've not visited this page, and I plan to, but based on the idea, I can't see it being anything but successful. So I'm sure that with a little bit of massaging and more work, that it will be something quite extraordinary in time to come. Can you give us any more ideas on other projects on which you're working, or new? You mentioned a few courses. What should we expect from you in the near future?
We're releasing a little course it's almost like a 21-day challenge. It starts on the 1st of March this year, and it's about 21 days of joy, called Daily Sparks, and it's about giving people in that 21-day period like actionable steps to create, just to focus on a little bit more happiness and joy in their lives. And I finished my side of the deal. I've created all the videos, and so all the content's up, and it's open now. It'll be open to the public and ready to start. And this is the beginning. I know this year we're working on a few courses, and this is just the first one. And I feel again, I have so much gratitude for my team, because I've only had to create. I work with the content, but also I'm creating the videos, doing the presentations, but I have all the team now doing the editing and the marketing and the everything. And so it's kind of strange to create this course and then have it up there on a website, and and it's exciting. I'm really excited by it.
Yeah, and I'm sure very liberating for you. You're now, as you said, part of a team, so your contribution is probably, I don't want to say the weightiest, right? Everybody is serving his or her role, but it's one important component of many, and then you're able to do it and step away instead of spending your nighttime hours, instead of getting cozy in that very dark room of yours with some chamomile tea and your dog by your side, editing your videos as the candle burns low, and trying to perfect your song entrances and outros and things like that. So it must really be liberating. It really must be nice. You've been so generous with your time thus far. I want to pose to you one more question. I hesitate to do it because it's a little bit of a more solemn point, but I was thinking about this earlier today. I sort of had an idea of how I wanted our conversation to go, and it far exceeded even my best expectations. But I wanted to ask you about the current state of mental health, or perhaps I should say mental unhealth. Now, I know, of course, you aren't a physician, you're not a psychiatrist, and you make that very clear on your website and on your YouTube channel. And I don't think people are seeking your wisdom for those reasons. But in America, at least, the statistics are very discouraging as it pertains to mental health, especially among our younger generations, say the millennials and the Gen Zers, or the Zoomers, right, by whom will be succeeded, those born in the late 1990s or so and thereafter, or earlier. So we live in an age in which technology is perfectly abundant, right? We never knew a time when we had access to videos such as yours that deal with mindfulness and healthful living and sleep and all these wonderful things, on which a good, wholesome life is dependent, and so many other sources as well. But it seems like with the increase of all these avenues that we could take and learn a lot from and improve our mental health, the mental health seems to be precipitously declining. So I don't have an exact question to pose to you on this matter, but I'm sure it's something about which you've pondered and probably by which you're quite disquieted. So I'm speaking about America. Perhaps it's a little different. I hope it's a little different in Australia, but it might not be. It might just be a sort of a universal affliction in the West. So maybe we can end or come toward the end of this conversation with a few comments on this issue. The kind of material that you're putting out should at least serve as a bit of a remedy to what we're seeing, but yet what we're seeing is really increasing in its severity.
I will tell you, it is the same here in Australia, and I know that the mental health rates have been through the roof here, in particular after COVID, which was another huge where things declined greatly. It concerns me deeply. It concerns me deeply about the avenues such as and I'm on TikTok. We've started up a little platform there, and Instagram, and all these short grabs and YouTube shorts now, and that they're all just there's so many seconds long. I've found myself sometimes beginning to go like that, and I just I can't begin to imagine if a child does that from an early age, and what that's doing with their mind. Like when I was younger, if there was such thing as ADHD when I was younger, I most likely fell into that basket. I always got the reports, Jason is easily distracted. That was just constant. Now, we didn't even have computers when I was at high school. They got introduced just as I left. So that's showing my age now, but this whole thing that we're literally born now with these phones in our head, the kids are born with they take them to school and everything. I have deep concerns about this. So I think this is really, really important. Kids, we've brought kids up on this now. We were brought up on it, but the kids in particular are really brought up on it. And I think it's really important now more than ever that this better start changing, that we better start giving them some respect and listening time by putting our phones down and begin to listen to children and begin to take time away from social media, no matter what it is, no matter whether doesn't matter if it's meditation or whatever it is. Yes, there's some beautiful aspects of social media. I've learnt so much through it myself, but there's a real insidious side going on that is shortening people's attention span. And that's a definite. That's been now scientifically proven. They're saying that 7-second attention spans and some things like this. It does. It deeply concerns me, and so I can just reiterate. Now's the most important time. I think we're reaching this turning point that we must change. We must do something to have a bit of self-love and self-respect and start to take self-care for ourselves. And that part of that is taking breaks away from the computer screen, breaks away from all social media, all of it, And even if that starts with, even if it starts with 2 hours a week, just stop, take time, and then get to know your family. I saw this awful sight when I was back in New South Wales of two parents, and this is probably a common sight. It was at a restaurant, two parents and a child, and they all had iPads.
Yeah.
And I remember the young child, he was playing something on his, and he asked his mum a question, and she hushed him up and said, "Shh, just get on with playing your game." And they all went back to their iPads, and I was just like, oh my goodness, we're in trouble.
It's a devastating
change.
What you just vividly depicted is a devastating scene, but unfortunately an all too common one. There must be a little bit of tension. I say there must be, perhaps there isn't, but in your world where, although you do seem to be balancing it perfectly, where so much of your business is predicated on the internet, on promoting a channel and being present on social media and continuously producing and putting out content, once or twice a week, and drawing eyeballs to that and clicks. Yet at the same time, that's something against which we need to resist in some ways, right? But it's all about that healthy balance. And I think we're in a society that's completely imbalanced. And like you said, I'm not sure exactly how to restore that equilibrium from which we've strayed. I hope that a channel like yours can in some ways return people to some stability, some mindful stability. Of course, perhaps can't go the full way, right? There must be other things that they do, and I think we covered a few. It's getting into nature, getting your bare feet on the ground. We didn't talk about grounding, but that's something to which I devote a few minutes or a few hours of my day every single day.
Oh wow!
Always now I have the advantage of living in a warm climate, so it's easy for me on my lunch break to kick off my this is what I do, to kick off my shoes and go stand by the lake for an hour and read and be in the sun. And I'm sure I know that isn't available to everyone, anyone listening in the state of Minnesota right now, or in England, or wherever it may be in the month of February when we're recording this, is probably looking at me with a sneer as I say this. But that's something that we could be doing. Being more mindful, trying to reconnect with nature, trying to reconnect with community, as you mentioned, going to your coffee shop, spending time, even if it's a brief while, with some of your local townsmen and women, and just being in their presence and exchanging pleasantries and salutations, being in a religious setting. Now, I don't know if you're attending a church or a temple now, but just something that you mentioned, being in a religious community. I think what you depicted as a day in the life of Jason, the content creator, the master of YouTube, is actually a very well balanced life that maybe not all of us can adopt, but parts of whose parts we can try to inhabit and try to live out in our own way. Having a dog, having friends, having a religious community, having a social community, having a connection with family, your parents, going on long exhausting treks across the desert. And I'm going to pull up a Google map later and actually take a gander at this. But I think that the advice that you've given and the lessons that you've imparted to me and to this audience are absolutely invaluable. So I want to leave the last word to you. I am eternally grateful that you decided to take a little bit of time out of your day and chat with me. What have you to say to conclude on? Anything? Any departing thoughts?
Well, first of all, I'd just like to say thank you so much Daniel, for inviting me. I'm so glad I've got to meet you. You're a wonderful, beautiful young man, and I know that you're going to do well, whatever you do. You sound pretty grounded yourself, so it's a wonderful thing, mate. Just keep hold of that. And I guess I'd like to leave with a little quote that I've always loved. There's one that says, "Come to the edge," he said. "They said, we are afraid. Come to the edge," he said. They came, he pushed them, and they flew. And I love that quote. And my mind now is going, who wrote that? Who said that? But it's oh my goodness! Can you find that out and put that in your podcast?
Indubitably, we will absolutely have that.
It's been so long since I've done an interview. Normally, I'm really on the ball with all this. But
you have to have that one sharp. You at least have to have attribution.
My goodness!
An angry deceased poet sending a posthumous lawsuit.
I feel really bad about that now.
No, no. Do not worry. Do not worry. No, we'll do a quick Google search.
Thank you.
We'll reveal the identity of this esteemed poet that has been so inspirational to you and now to me, because that is a fantastic word of wisdom. It sounds quite religious in nature. It sounds like really trusting in something greater than oneself.
Absolutely.
Whatever that being may turn out to be. So I will, of course, link to all of your social media, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube channels. We'll be sure to promote both the one that really needs no promotion from me, and of course the new undertakings as well. Are there any other avenues that we should seek to find you, or any other products that we should be aware of? Any other things?
Yeah, I think if people can go to www.jasonstephenson.net, we give a free guided meditation as an MP3, and that also gets them on the email list, and they can get to keep up with what's actually happening on my side of the fence. Yeah,
excellent, great. So all of that will be written out in the description of this video that will put below the video itself. So again, it can't be said enough, Jason. I'm so grateful to you for joining me for this extended period of time. I think your content is, like I said, invaluable. I think 700 million views would agree, and your 3 million subscribers all attest to your talent and to the great content that you're producing. So again, thank you so much. And to everyone listening, farewell from Finner and Zwick.